First up is a film called Reminiscence. It's out in theaters, but also available on HBO Max. And it's written and directed by Lisa Joy, who you may know from Westworld. She is married to Jonathan Nolan, who is Christopher Nolan's brother. And Jonathan Nolan is also a producer on this. And the reason I bring all of that up is because the vibe of this film is very Westworld esque. It also reminds me a little bit of Inception. And I'm like, even if you marry into the family, does that just mean you have to be making films in this sort of genre and theme? The film is a crime thriller, I think, and maybe a love story and all of these things, but it takes place in a world where you can relive your memories through, some sort of technology. It also actually reminds me a little bit of Watchmen, the HBO series, which, HBO, Westworld, all these things starting to come together. So it stars Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, Tandy Newton, Cliff Curtis, and Daniel Wu. And I don't know how to feel about this film. I think conceptually it's really interesting, but I think in execution there are things that I did not love, because this is not a spoiler, but by the end of it I was just like, why am I supposed to care about any of this? Am I supposed to care about the main characters? Not always necessary for a film, but it's usually pretty helpful. Am I supposed to care about the greater world they live in? They don't really give us, I mean, they try to world build a little bit, but I think I don't know, the whole film is just a lot of them saying things at the audience and then expecting you to, I think, invest more or read more into that than it deserves. And that I think is a little problematic. And I would have been really, really interested to see Reminiscence as a series on HBO. Like, I think drawing it out may have actually been a much smarter way to approach it, because there are in the style of Westworld and in the style of some of Christopher Nolan's films as well, there are lots of little clues here and there. So they try and give you all the groundwork for the end of the payoff and etc. And I'm not going to spoil it, but it just felt emotionally hollow to me, and that is something that I find so necessary for a film like this. I think all the actors are doing a good job individually, but I didn't find the chemistry between some of them believable. Like, I think Tandy Newton was doing such a great job in this, but then she's playing off huge, and again, individual performances fine, but you are in a cast where you're playing off other people. It just wasn't quite working for me. I think, I hate to say this, but I think if you're going to watch it, on HBO Max might be the way to do it, so you don't feel bad about having spent a lot of money on it. Like, it's fine, but it's nothing revolutionary, and I would have loved to see more out of it. Also, I feel like she is treading on a lot of the same territory that she goes over in Westworld, and you see a lot, there's a lot of cast members, obviously Tandy Newton being the biggest one, from Westworld, who appear in this. The composer's the same. I'm guessing the cinematographer probably has worked on a couple of Westworld episodes. I would love to see something different out of her at some point. But overall, I think it's a fine, okay crime thriller. You can check it out. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. And then the other film I have this week is called Annette, and it is streaming on Amazon Prime. And wow, on a scale of what the hell did I watch? I don't even know where to begin with this. So I will start with, I had not heard of Sparks, the band, until earlier this summer, watching the Sparks Brothers documentary from Edgar Wright, which I highly recommend. I cannot recommend that enough, in fact. So I didn't know who Sparks were. Sparks is a band. It consists of Ron and Russell Mael. They've been around for a really long time. They have inspired a bunch of musicians, but I feel like they're like the cool band that you don't know about unless you're a really, really cool kid. So the story is by them, and they are very, I would say, experimental, esoteric characters. And so a story by them is already getting into weird territory. And then the format of the film, it's a musical, but it's not always musical, if that makes sense. It stars Adam Driver, Marion Cotillard, and Simon Helberg. And I don't know if it's Marion Cotillard's voice, and I don't know if it's Simon Helberg's voice, but it sounds like Adam Driver's voice in this. And half the movie is in this sort of singing, talking thing that I truly just could not stand. And it was so hard to watch, and the movie's just super weird. Adam Driver plays this like stand-up comedian, famous character-ish, and then Marion Cotillard plays a singer or an opera singer or something, and it's about their relationship. And then they have a child, and I don't want to spoil it, but I also like, it just was super disturbing how it plays out. I'm gonna say it. They have a child, and the child is visually represented as a puppet, like it's a marionette puppet, and I found it really upsetting, and yeah, it was really freaky. There are some elements of it that I liked. Like, the parts that work the best for me are, so there's actual songs, and then there's this sort of like talking song moments that I did not enjoy at all. And then there's the actual music moments where they bring in actual singers and, musicians and stuff like that to underscore it. Those were fine and great. And I think if you listen to those out of context, you'd be like, okay, this is fine. But my God, this was so weird and so disturbing and like freaky and haunting. And this story, I I would love. Actually, I don't want whatever they're smoking, or even if they're smoking. I think they might be totally sober, but I don't want. I don't want any of that because I don't want to see inside those brains. I think if you are not a fan of Sparks to start, this is not this is not your movie. I think even if you are a fan of Sparks, this is not your movie. I don't know who this movie's for. I can't answer that question. Yeah. Even if you like Sparks, this is going to be like a really tough one. I think also like a bunch of Adam Driver has a bunch of fans. I am truly interested to see how they react to seeing this performance because I just don't know if please watch the trailer maybe if you really feel like it. But I will caution you otherwise. It feels weird for the sake of weird. And maybe, you know what? Maybe the answer is just listen to the soundtrack minus the sing talking points. Maybe that's the answer for it because then you'll get some new Sparks music. But I personally am going to give this 1 out of 5.